This video will demonstrate how to use the steel rating device. It is just two brackets that bolt to the Rogue rack. At this time I've rated at least 10 red nails, and I have generated ratings that are consistent with what others have rated them at. They've all come between 440 and 450 pounds. So I believe that this setup will generate an accurate reading for just about any nail, but that's yet to be verified. Now both brackets will bolt to your rack with a 1 5/8 bolt for each bracket. I've been referring to the bracket that holds the chains as the top bracket, but in fact it doesn't have to be on top. It could also be on bottom. It really will not matter when it is in the vertical position. It's a single 3/8 bolt that holds the chains on, and I've got mine about 3 links up, but you'll be able to move these chains to whatever suits your needs and however much rack space you want to take up. I've been referring to this as the bottom bracket, but once again, it doesn't have to be on bottom. And it has the threaded bolt and nut which actually bends the steel. Now you'll notice that I've got the nut for the bolt that holds it to your rack facing out. It will have to be this way when it's mounted to your rack because the bolt will not fit through on this side. Now since I don't have a Rogue rack, I mounted mine to a couple of boards that were bolted together. So I was pretty limited on the spacing that I could use between the two brackets, but you won't be because you have a rack that has evenly spaced holes. You'll be able to move it up or down to suit your needs, and you'll also be able to adjust those chains if necessary to fit your needs. It's something you'll have to dial in once you get it at your home and get it set up. Now here I'm just demonstrating the action of the bottom bracket. That collar on top allows the threaded bolt and nut to turn without your scale and carabiner turning. Now in this video I'm using a 1 1/8 socket and a 1/2 inch socket, but you could substitute either of these for a wrench or even a crescent wrench. I also use a little bit of oil on the threads. That just makes things a little easier. I use rim oil because that's what's on hand and what I use for grippers. So now the first step is to put the nail in the shackles. I've already marked my nail 3/4 of an inch from the ends, and I'm going to put that little line right in the center of that shackle. And I'm just going to snug up the bolts. I found that they don't have to be extremely tight. It just slows down the process of rating, but they do need to be pretty snug. And I'll mount it for both sides, and then I'm going to check to make sure that the nail is perpendicular to the scale, in which case it is. So now you're going to hook your scale up, and your bottom bracket should be threaded all the way up, turned clockwise as much as you can to give you plenty of room to take the slack out and to bend the nail. And so you've got to leave enough room to get your scale hooked up, but then you want to take that slack up. And when your rig, once again, will be vertical, this won't be such a big deal, but it was for mine. And when you take the slack out, you really got to make sure that you're centered on the nail. I found that drastically changes the rating of the nail when it is bent off center. So now that I've taken the slack out of the chain, I'm going to turn the scale on, make sure it goes to 0, and then I'm going to start using the threaded nut. You're going to turn counterclockwise in order to bend the nail. One of the things I found is that the rating on the scale tends to jump up directly after you have applied torque to the nut in order to bend the nail. It tends to jump up and then backs off by a few pounds. That may be due to me using a piece of wood as my support. Your Rogue rack will not flex any, if at all. You also notice I'm using my other hand just on the carabiner there, and that's just to stabilize the unit, to keep my scale centered and keep everything centered. Now I eyeball it to about 20 degrees because I've done about 10 of these already. I eyeball it to 10 degrees, and then I've got a welding rod that's bent to 30 degrees, and that's what I'm using to compare my bent nail with to determine when I've gotten to 30 degrees, and I've found that it's pretty accurate. And then I'll give it just another slight turn and use the hold function. And you see I've got 448.4. So after playing with this and rating about 10 nails, I think that I dialed in the process, and all of the nails came with between 440 and 450, with the exception of the one, like I said, was bent off center, and that significantly changes the rating. So I hope that this video helps you use these brackets to rate nails, and more importantly, I hope that the brackets themselves serve their purpose. And thank you very much.